All right, so now we're going to move to the NFL. We got the first of two games to talk about here over these next two episodes. The first one being, as you can see, the Baltimore Ravens, simply put, they absolutely decimated, dominated, and annihilated and eviscerated the Detroit Lions on Sunday afternoon. I mean, this one was a surprise. A big game for Lamar, big trust. He came out, he put on a great performance, reminding people who he was. Baltimore, they got a 38-6 win. Big one there.
Yeah, this one, we'll just go ahead and say we were wrong in every way we could have been. We called the Lions, and we said that the Ravens hadn't quite been as impressive. They had some rocky moments. They put all that behind them. They came out and put up a huge win against what has been one of the better teams in the league so far. And they did it very convincingly. I mean, these stats, they don't look like, you don't look at them and go, dang, how'd they get 38 points? We won't be covering this game, but I can say that if I was to look at some of the stats from the Browns and Colts game, I thought, dang, how did they put up 39 points? So this game, not so much. The Ravens come out and let you know. So Lamar, big dress, comes out 21 for 27, only missing 6 passes, 357 yards, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions. Also, of course, it being Lamar Jackson, he's going to use his legs, he's going to use them well. He puts up 36 rushing yards and gives himself a touchdown. Gus Edwards, however, leads them on the ground with 64 yards and a touchdown. Justice Hill behind them with 46 yards. So Lamar actually ends up last in rushing, doesn't have to put his team on his back and go crazy with all the rushing, which is good. It's good to see them get some rushing going, considering the health of their running back room usually. Gus also had a crazy day in the air, getting one reception for 80 yards and a touchdown. Just a big game on one big pass. Obviously had a good day on the ground as well, but that's going to add, that adds more than what he got on the ground in just one catch, and he gets a touchdown. So huge day for Gus Edwards. Has been kind of floating around for the Ravens these past few seasons, waiting on opportunities. Got a big one this time. Zay Flowers and Mark Andrews kind of the bulk of the work in the air, both getting 4 receptions. Zay Flowers 75 yards, Mark Andrews 63 yards, and 2 touchdowns. You know that Mark Andrews is always a favorite. Lamar Jackson's the third to. Nelson Aguilar would actually be the guy who gets the other touchdown. Kind of has scored a few times this season so far, and each time it's just kind of like a reminder that he is is there and is still in the
Yeah.
league. So Lamar does get credited with a fumble. It's kind of a Justice Hill fumble. I don't really know exactly what goes into giving the fumble to who on that play. It was a handoff, and then Justice fumbles, and I guess they say Lamar handed it off poorly or something. I don't know. But Lamar does have a fumble on a stat sheet. If you watch the game or saw the play or anything, not quite as bad as that sounds, but not great. Geno Stone picked off Jared Goff, and just overall the Ravens' defense was dominant. They held the Lions scoreless for a lot of the game. I mean, defensively, offensively, defense is great for them. Offense is great. Everything just goes just the way it needs to go for the Ravens in this one. For the Lions, not so much. Jared Goff goes 33 for 53, 284 yards, no touchdowns, 1 interception. Just not a great game for a guy who was just this week being talked about. Hey, this guy could be an MVP candidate. And this was not a game to add to that resume. Lamar might have put himself in the discussion, but Jared Goff took himself down a peg on this one. Jahmyr Gibbs did have a good day in David Montgomery's absence. He got 68 yards, and he scored the only Lions touchdown. He also added 58 yards in the air for a total of 126 yards on the day. So showed that with the right opportunity, he could do good, but also they lost 38-6. Might not be the most convincing thing to Dan Campbell that Jahmyr Gibbs got out there, got 126 yards and a touchdown. He might really not care. Amon-Ra St. Brown had a pretty big day. Had 13 receptions, 103 yards. Of course, did not get into the end zone. He also did get suplexed in the middle of the game. He walked up to Rocky Sin and started, I don't know, trying to start a scuffle, and then he got slammed on the ground, and it just kind of moved on from there. So that was the end of that. Lions went for 2 on their only score. Very Dan Campbell of them. I mean, they're already down a lot. Why not go for it? They missed, and so you get the pretty poor 38-6 score. I guess then, to their credit, if they get the 2-point conversion, you'll end up with a 38-8 game. And I don't see where that makes much of a difference. So yeah, they go for it. They don't get it. It is what it is. It wasn't going to help them anyway. Lions, who've been good on offense, who've been good on defense, who've been good on special teams, just came out and got swallowed up in all aspects of the game. Their offense couldn't go anywhere. Their defense couldn't stop anything. Special teams didn't really do anything wrong. But this one is definitely gonna hurt if you were a Lions fan. It felt like a return to Detroit of a few years ago. I don't expect this to be the Lions that we get all the time, but this one is definitely one to look at and go, this could happen to them if everything goes wrong.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, you don't expect this to happen to them, often. I mean, this might just be their game that they have this year, where it's like everything went as wrong as possible, and that's just that one game for them. It's not like you know NFL. It's not like, oh, you lose by 20, it's two losses, or you lose by 30, it counts as three losses or anything. It's still just one loss, but we do have to look at it and say, like, all right, that as great as the Ravens played, I mean, you got to look at the line and say, what the heck is going on here? Like, are you guys really? I don't want to say, oh, are they really that good? But you kind of have to ask that question, like, what's going on? Because if you're playing a team that you just said it, we were wrong in our pick, but we did
Yeah.
say, to be fair, the Ravens, this season hadn't been. I mean, Lamar had been fine, but the Ravens overall hadn't been insanely impressive. At the top of the AFC North, but to beat the Texans, like, man, had a good game against the Bengals, like, pulled that one out, and then they lost to some foolishness at the end against the Colts, but they still lost. And then beat up on the Browns with a backup quarterback who, that they ended up winning 2 games in a row with another backup quarterback. So who knows? And then they lose to the Steelers the way they did, and a game against the Titans where it's like, they had a good lead, and then they let them almost come back. Not super impressive overseas. So despite being a good team record wise, we weren't really sure how good they were. And of course, the Ravens aren't going to play like this every single game. It's not going to be like, Lamar's MVP season a few years ago. But that is, I mean, they played really almost a perfect game. Like outside of the, fumble, the mishandled handoff, like you said, I guess that one will count for Lamar. But outside of that, they pretty much played a perfect game. I mean, it was literally, I mean, you 4 straight drives of touchdown, punt, touchdown, punt, touchdown, punt, touchdown, turnover on downs. I mean, there's just not really much you can say. I mean, kind of like the Penn State game, we just talked about this. When you get decimated, and obviously the score is a lot bigger, score differential there, but when you get decimated like this, there's really not much you can say about the Lions' performance. I mean, they didn't have it. Defensively, they obviously could not stop the Ravens. I mean, after the first 2 touchdowns, I'm looking at it like this game is probably over. Then when they went 3 and out again, I'm like, yeah, it's probably done because if you have 2 straight drives that were essentially flawless, um, only had 1 3rd down, you had a 3rd and 2, then a 4th and 1, where Lamar actually ended up scoring there, and then the second drive, you had 3 3rd downs, so like nothing really crazy there. It's not like they were super long 3rd downs either. So like a 3rd and 2 here, 3rd and 3 here. So essentially, it's just a flawless drive. I mean, they clicking on all cylinders on offense. Then the next drive, basically the same thing. They didn't get a single. They had 1 3rd down on this one, 3rd and 11, which they then converted. And then the last one to start, no 3rd downs. They scored. That play, I'm trying to remember which play it was. It was that really long play. I think it was Gus Edwards. That
Yeah.
one, I was just like, that pretty much summed up the game. We talked about last video that drive with Penn State kind of summed up the game. This one, Greg Olson was talking about it on the broadcast. Like it looked like it was kind of a broken play there, or was it at least Lamar was supposed to go like one way, but it ends up just going the other way and flipping it to Gus Edwards. And I've never seen anything like this. There were literally no defenders there for like a good 40, 50 yards. And I guess as everybody, all the receivers were going to the other side. So defenders obviously followed, but like nobody was there. And I'm like, you have to. I said out loud, you have to be kidding me. There is no way. And that pretty much summed up the game, man. And again, this doesn't kill the Lions. I mean, it's not the end of the season. The rest of the North, Bears picked up a win. Packers lost again. We'll see with the Vikings tonight, but I think they still have the division in hand. It's just you got to be able to recover from losses like this, and this wasn't an exposure. I mean, the Ravens, they're clearly a good team, um, great team right now. Obviously, this one definitely moved us for sure. But yeah, you have to look at Lions. You have to look at yourself and say, all right, that was just probably the worst we could play this season. Let's make sure we do everything possible to not do what we did in this one, and to have another loss like that again.
Yeah, I think this is one that we saw something like this last year with the Lions. Not that they were as good as they've been this season, but when they played the Panthers run all over them. They racked up a bunch of rushing yards. They scored and scored and scored. And Campbell even congratulated Steve Oakes at the end for the behind gun they took. I mean, he was like, "You got it." And I think this is something that happens to it can happen to any team. We saw it as Panthers fans when we took that loss to the Steelers and Cam Newton's shoulder never recovered. Sometimes you just get out there and a team handles you. Last year's Panthers definitely nowhere near as good as the current Baltimore Ravens, so this one's maybe a little more understandable to have this happen to you. And maybe some of the shakiness of the Ravens and the greatness of how the Lions have played so far led to some ego issues and some underestimating. But this is one that they got to look past. Their division is not near as good as Baltimore's division, so they're not going to be as stressed. As you said, the Packers threw it away. I mean, the Bears won, but it was with Tyson Bagent. But I don't think they're going to be too worried about that one. And we'll see what the Vikings do. But I think the Lions have just kind of taken their annual beatdown. They'll probably move on from it. I'm not sure that a team will get them this bad. Again, Dan Campbell as a coach is pretty good about adjusting from things like that, and it's hard to adjust mid-game while it's happening, especially when they put up the first 28 all in the first half. You get a lot of time to regroup and figure it out. So I don't expect to see this from the Lions again. I wouldn't necessarily say I don't expect to see this from the Ravens again. I think they showed in this game kind of what they are. The Lions defense has been pretty good this season. They came out here and they put up 38 pretty much with ease. So I am, as you said, I am moved by this one. The Ravens, I think, are a great team. They're out 5-2. They're right up there with the Lions. I think they showed their full potential in this one. Offensively, they put up a really good defensive performance too. So there's a lot that the Ravens can walk away with, knowing that they're in a pretty tough division. That if they can just do things like this, at least close to this, they've got it pretty good. Especially with the Bengals starting slow, the Browns and Steelers being tough and gritty, but kind of in a shaky zone. Ravens have the division to run away with if they can just kind of keep this under them and keep moving. So it'll be interesting to see where these two teams go. I don't expect this out of the Lions again. I wouldn't hold this against. I wouldn't say that the Ravens couldn't do this again. They're a really good team, and if they can stay healthy, more than they already have lost this season,
Right.
then I think they'll be a pretty scary team to go up against. The Lions as well. Me personally, I wouldn't want to be the team that goes up against Dan Campbell right after he takes a 38-6 loss. It's probably not going to be a fun time, even if you do beat them. So yeah, I think both these teams have something to look forward to going forward. The Lions have a lot to fix in this game, but realistically, things just went wrong. They just couldn't get anything going. They got shut down. And sometimes that happens, and there's not much you can do but move on to the next one and try it again. So great game for the Ravens. They got up in there. I think they're in that elite category right now. I wouldn't pull the Lions out of it, but if I had to put people in order, they would be below the Ravens right now for pretty obvious reasons.